Hello and welcome to The Magic in You, where I am here with Rachel Roberts, who is the author of Lupa, She-Wolf of Rome, Wolf, Embody Your Inner Wolf, and Pantheon, the Romans. She's also a sacred dance teacher, priestess, empowerment and flower essence coach, and as well as being the creatrix of Wolf Women Rising, a wisdom school which empowers people to embody their wisdom, reclaim their authentic, wild, untamed selves, and create a life lived in purpose. But early for me this morning, so we will get there. So all of this is done through an online community and courses and trainings, as well as personal retreats, and you will find all of the important links to Rachel and her work below. So as I bring her on screen, I would like to say welcome, Rachel. Thank you for talking about the magic in you.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
You're more than welcome. So I would like to sort of start off saying, because you've got a little bit of variety in your path and your writings as well. How would you
Mhm.
describe your current path if you follow one, and what exactly do you do?
Mm. Okay, so I'll start with my path first then. So I consider my path to be very flexible, organic. I don't stick to a particular path. I don't like being labeled or boxed, and I don't like doing that to other people as well. Um, Often that can be a challenge for people that know me or find me because they want to know exactly what I am, but I change every day. You know who I am. I'm always growing, always evolving. So perhaps I'm a plant, I'm a flower, always growing. But there's lots of things that resonate for me in particular. So I particularly connect to goddess energy, but that doesn't stop me from working with gods or God. So I approach them. My practice kind of involves various different things: plants, writing, dance. That's been quite diverse. My background, I think because that has diversity in it, that's led my path to be quite diverse. So I was brought up a Christian. My family are still Christians. I still resonate with that on some level. But also, I'm of the Druid lineage, so I live in North Wales. I'm connected to the land and the mountains. I've always found the divine in nature, in the trees, rather than in a building. Um, you could call me a witch because the fact that I do craft work with herbs and plants. Also, I really resonate with the term priestess, but I see that as a term that I choose because I am of service to the divine, and my work is to um, interpret perhaps the divine's wisdom and also give guidance and structure and facilitation for people that want to connect to it. So um, it's not a definite thing. Like I couldn't say I am one definite thing or one pathway. Um, I just allow myself, I give allowance to where I am and what I need at the time, because we are ever changing and ever evolving. Um, and what I do is kind of is a mixture of all of these things. I try to offer myself allowance and offer those that follow me allowance for that diversity and that difference that we can be. So everybody, can resonate and find a different pathway. I think different parts of their life, even different weeks. And depending what you're going through as well, that'll always change, what you do and how you do it.
Mhm. Oh, no. Thank you very much for sharing that. And you've touched on a number of points, which I think is very important for people to, especially in this day and age where I don't know if it's a human thing. We like to box and label ourselves. And then once we get into this box, either we can't break ourselves out or other people will come up to us and say, I thought you did this and how dare you change, sort of thing. But you've just sort of brought us back to the very fact that we are flowing, that we are all evolving, and this can also change. And there's also, I think, listening to what you're saying, we can find connection in a whole range of things. In particular, something that I really love is connection to, say, where you live in Wales. And though you may or may not be a druid, there's that connection there back with the land. And I think that's overall important in our day and age as we get too much into our head, virtual reality, and even though we're both writers, into our books, it's taking that next
Mm-hmm.
step out and actually doing that. So I suppose this is a good little leeway because you are an author of 3 books. What was the attraction of wolves? Because they seem to be predominant in the 2 books that you've written at least. And I suppose the Romans, Rome was founded by sons of wolves, should we say? So what's this attraction that you have with wolves? Because as far as I'm aware, Wales doesn't have any wolves, or do they now?
No, we don't have any wild pure wolves anymore. There are wolf sanctuaries. There's one like literally 10 minutes away from me that has wolf dogs in a sanctuary. Um, but the wolf connection for me hasn't been kind of a physical thing. So I've never actually met a real wolf. I have connected to them on a spiritual, an energetic way. For me, wolf has been very much about my embodiment, my healing as well. So wolf kind of has always been there for me as a guide, one of my animal guides, along with others. But it has particularly been a resonant connection for my inner feminine. My feminine has been the one that originally connected me to wolf because I was attracted to being wild and untamed. I felt very constricted growing up as a teenager, like a girl should be good, she should be this, she should be quiet, she should be that. And I was being told so many things about what I should be. I felt like my inner wolf was just howling just to say, shut up, really, let me think, let me be, let me just explore what I am, my wild and untamed self, before it has all those societal expectations or judgments. And then, I then connected to my first wolf guide, I suppose, that I could name was Lupa, the she wolf of Rome. Hence why I wrote my first book about her. So she was the main one that came forth as a deity, first of all. Since her, it's actually been the kind of masculine guides that have come forward, wolf gods that have come forward, because the next step is then I've needed the healing from them. But yeah, Lupa really. So I found her because I was at a stage in my life where I had no idea where I was going or who I was really. I was made redundant from what I had considered was my dream job. I'd been working towards it. I'd been working through the heritage sector, working in castles and stately homes for over 10 years. I say 10 decades, then I'm not that old. 10 years. I feel that old. I'm not that old. 10 years. And I landed this job, and then when you think you know what you want, and then I was in it and I was like, it's still not quite right. And then I was made redundant from it, and I found myself like, whoa, what happens now? Like, where do I go? And I'd had this niggle inside of me that I wanted to write. I'd always written books, like, myself and my hobby. But I realized what I call in like the wolf cave, which is really the dark night of the soul. Lupa had taken me in there. I realized in the darkness where there was nothing else, just me in this kind of cavity, this no man's land. I discovered that I just needed to give myself permission. But I had to go to that dark place. I had to be in the nothing, in the unknown, to actually kind of have what I really wanted to do affirmed. And give myself permission. So then I started writing, really, because I was taken to that place, and she just happened to be my guide when I was there. And I just knew the first book had to be about her because of the journey I'd been on with her, and I wanted to reclaim her story just as I was reclaiming my story at the time.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that. And you did mention that the wolf, or the wolf's deities, you said the masculine deities, sort of like coming through more to sort of aid in your healing. I think that's really important, especially in this age, and more for women too, because we do sort of gravitate more, and I think it's because we've been pressed over the years. Can we go so much, or the feminine has been sort of removed from our sort of conscious memory, and so this is something that naturally, I'll say naturally, we gravitate towards when we discover that there is actually a goddess, or was a goddess, female aspects of divine. We're actually seeing divinity in our own image, to take interpretation out from the Christian book. But
Yeah.
I feel it's also important, as you mentioned, to bring in the healing around the divine masculine as well. And you said that the wolf guides have sort of like aided you in that area. Are you able to share a little bit more about the importance of that? Or I don't want to get like too personal, but I just thought,
No,
especially
that's
from a
fine.
woman's point of view, tapping into the divine male archetype even, I think is very
Mhm.
important for women to realize this balance I think I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm happy to share about anything. I'll go deep personal. So yeah, how I came to it was I was working so much with Goddess that I mean, I've always been a very feminine, connected to my feminine. People say you're a very girly girl. Um, and then when I started working a lot with the divine feminine, I realized that kind of for me that was my known. That was the outside, I suppose. But then the inside, the underground part was actually the masculine. And I discovered that because I felt this unequalness within me. Although there's been a kind of an equalness, outside in society, like you said, where the feminine has been a bit more quiet for a while. It was kind of the opposite in me. My feminine was very apparent, but that was because a part of my path. So the masculine has always been a difficult element for me. I had a very kind of authoritative father who could not look outside of himself. He was the center of the universe, and we all just revolved around him. And then that moved into kind of a period of where the masculine was very predatory for me. Um, I kind of had a very abusive relationship. I don't know how to put it. I was going to say victim, but victim's not the right word at all because I'm not. But I went through the experience of sexual abuse and rape. Um, and I had this kind of relationship with a masculine that was very much rejecting it. It was dangerous. It was difficult, and I just didn't want to go there. And actually, it took me going to Glastonbury, and at that point, went there to connect more with the goddess, and I actually found myself reconnecting to the god. In the darkness, there, I kind of was having this feeling within myself that there needed to be more of a marriage between the two, that the feminine was wanting her counterpart. She was wanting the other half of her because she couldn't work on her own. She wasn't, it was fine, being feminine, but she needed the masculine. I had rejected the masculine within myself because of my bad negative experiences with the physical masculine outside of myself. But because of that, I'd rejected within myself, and I was lacking things like discipline and structure. I was so much going with the flow that I was just flowing all over the place, and I needed the masculine to actually to teach me some lessons. Um, so actually, the deity that I connected to in Glastonbury was actually I suppose you might want to call him Pan, or Henny, or I call him Faunus, the Roman version, kind of this wild man. Because of that raw sexuality was there, because that's where I'd had that real wounding, was around the masculine sexuality I'd seen as a scary thing, a terrifying thing that could destroy me. So first I had to kind of feel that within myself, accept, and work with that. And then I've continued to work with the masculine in various different ways. My two primary deities I work with now are wolf deities, and one of them is Mars and one of them is Apollo. And I work with them in two different ways. Apollo is about finding joy within myself. With him, I listen to music and just allow myself to just be with the music and feel it running through me and healing me. With him, he's been teaching me about how healing and disease, or can be the same thing, that you find the healing in the disease. And that the healing can become the disease as well, So he's taught me about that paradox, that shadow and light, that Wolf is very much, teaches us through all of its wisdom. And then Mars, I really connected to as the father energy. So reclaiming the father within myself. So how can I father myself when that has been lacking in my life? And why do I need it? For me, for him, it was about boundaries, healthy boundaries. So Mars is Pater, Mars the father is the wolf, is the wolf that creates the boundaries around the den, around the territory, not boundaries which I have, which let nobody in, and not boundaries that, keep everybody out. Looking at how they're healthy and what does it mean for them to be healthy for me? That's the way that I've connected to him, and that's been my path.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for being so honest and open about your path. I find that personally sort of much gratitude, if I can say that. But you've touched on some really important things that I think, especially for women too, when we when we find ourselves in situations, often I suppose men might do as well, but I can't speak for men, is we sort of embrace, say, the feminine more, especially if we have had negative experiences with the male. And I find it really interesting. It's almost like, so you've got this very strong masculine, as you said, the wild masculine coming in, who sort of like really focused strictly on your wounding part, almost taking you back into that shadow, but then showing you how you can empower yourself and rise out of that even stronger. So again, thank you very much for sharing that, which covers the next question I was going to ask you as to how your path or your connection with these deities have helped you, especially in the darkest times. You've mentioned that about, especially with Mars, and it's probably something that we don't really think about Mars as being the father of boundaries. Usually associate him with war and aggression and even energy, but there's this other aspect as well. Is there anything else you feel that maybe your path or your connection with Wolf has enabled you to move through, say, darker times? And I'm thinking about our world today, how it's still changing. And you talked about how Wolf came to you when you went through, one dark night, losing your dream job, which may not have turned out to be the dream job, but the soul-focused dream job, but also then led you down the path as a writer. So has there been anything else that's enabled you or shaped you to sort of cope through as we ebb and flow through these changing times a little bit more?
Yeah, good question.
Long-winded, I know, but yes.
No. It's beautiful all that you shared. So Lupa, in her story, in the foundation story of Rome, which I really kind of, in my book, I reclaim as her story, because I do think she's the kind of the pivotal character, actually, because without her, like none of it would have happened. I heard her voice most strongly in the foundation story, but in that story, the future founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, are placed into a basket to be murdered, to be killed. She finds them as they land somewhere down the river. She takes them, she nurtures them, she suckles them. She then protects them from more people that come to kill them, takes them to her cave. Their experience and their time with her then leads them into their future. She's like this threshold, this kind of alchemical process. Before they were just babies and the grandsons of kings. After they leave her, they then become founders. In the kings of Rome, they found this great city that becomes an empire. When I first heard this story, I was like, gosh, okay, like I said to you before, I am in the cave right now. I've been vulnerable. I've been lost. I've just come down this river. She's taken me into the cave. And now I'm in the cave and I need to decide what's coming next. Why have I been brought here? That why I think happens kind of every single time we go into the cave. We get taken there many, 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 many times. We get taken into the other worlds, the dark night, the soul, whatever you want to call it. We get taken there again and again and again. With Lupa, I kind of saw it as a refining, a kind of turning kind of not the dross into gold, but making the gold more gold. It was like a time of clarity. So I was like, well, why am I here? It's a pivot again. And she showed me how all these times we go into the dark night of the soul, that's actually when we're in there, that darkness actually brings us clarity because there's nothing else we can hear in the dark. Our senses are awakened. And therefore we're kind of getting this more in touch with ourselves, but this kind of like torchlight is being put on to why are you here? Who are you? Like, really? Like, what's your purpose? They say about living life on purpose, not just floating around, not just doing anything, not just, you know, going to work, coming home until the day you die, but actually being here on purpose. Why are you here? Like, why did you choose now? Why did you choose this body in particular? Because you did choose this body. You chose the way you speak, the way you feel. You chose the way you look. They're all yours. They're your kind of tools that you've been given uniquely. I think every time you go into the cave, you're like, Ishtar, you're there, you're naked, you're completely exposed. There's nothing else but you. And so you can see, oh, what is this? What is this that I'm embodying? Why this lesson? So every time I've gone to a dark night of the soul, whether that's been losing my job or going through sexual assault, it's kind of given me more clarity about who I am, but also why am I here? Like if I hadn't been through that experience of sexual assault, I wouldn't have perhaps have wanted to reclaim my own body and my own sexuality so passionately. If I hadn't gone into losing my job, perhaps I would have stayed in it and I wouldn't have actually finally given myself permission to be a writer and I wouldn't have impacted the thousands and people I have in the world. So it was necessary. And it's not about kind of making pain good or, kind of just saying, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." I do think, though, these dark nights of the souls, this pain time or that confusion or that being lost does actually have a value to it. There is a process that's happening that you need to see through. You don't want to stay there, but you don't want to avoid it either. It's something we move through, and it's really important to be moving through it. And that's what Lupa showed me.
No, wonderful, and thank you very much for sharing. And certainly, I agree because when you were talking out, first thing that came to mind is Inanna or Ishtar going down through the seven gates into the great below, where then she is confronted with Ereshkigal and then forced to face the consequences of her actions, and then sitting there. And often we don't seem to sit in, I wouldn't say sit in our pain, but just sit in our confusion and then give ourselves space, where as you said, also permission to tap back into, say, our soul purpose, these catchwords that we use today, to gain clarity. We're living too much in our head and we're seeing the next shiny object and then running towards that. And though I think a lot of us aren't as lucky as you are having these wonderful guides. I've never looked at a wolf in that way. I've always thought of a wolf as very strong, but also very more individualistic, solitary path, sort of a companion. But you're bringing a deeper level through to all as well, especially, as you said, the originating story of Rome. And again, this sort of comes back to what we were talking about with the female essence or figure, in this case, Lupa, being sort of pushed off to the sideline and people not taking note of the importance that she had. And often women, even today, our guiding, our influence is the backstory. And then we see this also in ancient cultures like ancient Egypt, where the man was king often, but it was usually the women behind him supporting him coming through. So we are sort of running out of time, but I'm wanting to sort of talked about Lupa, she-wolf of Rome. So it was Wolf, Embody Your Inner Wolf. Was that your next book, or was it the Pantheon, the Romans?
Yeah, so Wolf was the next book, the book I never expected because I was planning on writing another book. And I sat down and it just wasn't happening. And I realized because it wasn't the time. And what was came forth was, okay, you spoke about Lupa, but there's, no wolf is ever in isolation. There is a time always for the lone wolf, and a lot of people resonate to the archetype of lone wolf. But what's important about the lone wolf period is that it always comes to an end. They always return to a pack or create their own pack. So it felt important to be sharing about wolf essence and all the wolf deities so that there was a whole pack there, for people to connect to and find their way to connect to wolves. So wolf explores kind of more in depth real wolves and how they can inspire us, the lessons of them, like teamwork, like diversity and inclusion. And then I look at wolf deities, many deities where they are in mythology. I retell the story of Fenrir, the great wolf from Norse mythology. I reclaim his story. I tell it from his point of view because I think it's important, because he is the apocalypse, but he's also the beginning. And I think that has a real healing story for us. And then, yeah, Pantheon the Romans is Wolf is out, but Pantheon the Romans is coming out in January next year.
Mm.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell more about Rome in that one. That's my two loves, wolves and Roman deities.
Oh, wonderful. So what else do you do, or what else is sort of coming up for you? You do mention that you do courses and online events. Um, I will be listing your website below, but do you have anything specific, say, coming up in the next couple of months, or even this year, that you would like people to be aware of before they go and check your website out?
Yeah. So one thing I do offer, as well as the books, is like a seasonal journey with whichever goddess comes up at the time. The next one is Cybele, um, Magna Mater in ancient Rome, and the Great Mother. So I've got a journey coming up with her for spring equinox. Um, And then you can also work with me through flower essences as well. So I'm a flower essence coach and practitioner. I've been doing that for many years, and that's another way that people can connect to me. So the three kind of things I do are goddess wisdom, wolf wisdom, and plant wisdom. They're my three kind of great loves. And then my YouTube channel, I put things out all the time, like little mini workshops and meditations for people to enjoy. And I'm currently working on my fourth book, which is bringing in more of a sexuality and the sensuality healing with Flora, the Roman goddess of sensuality. So
Oh,
watch your space for that one.
wonderful, because we've still got Romans to come out next anyway. So a lot of books for people to sort of keep an eye out and to tap into, and especially to learn more about the wolves. And I'm just thinking how you talked about the wolves, and we're going back to the wolf, um, how people often see them as the solitary lone creatures, but then as you reminded us, they are pack animals, and they do have a very strong bond with their pack, and also the older animals as well. They sort of really look after their kin as well, so to speak. So something that I suppose as a species, we humans should maybe revisit and tap into our inner wolves as well.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from them. You really do.
That's wonderful. So, Rachel, thank you very much for your time. We said we are coming to the end. Anything else you would like to share in relation to your books? Where are they available? Where can people sort of find you? So, I'm going to be listing your website below, but anything else that you mentioned these wonderful courses coming up, but your books, where can they get your books from?
Yeah, so you can find all of the fun and interesting links on my website, which is wolfwomanrising.com. And then I'm on social media. I do Instagram and Facebook and YouTube are the three places that I am. Anything else, just I can't work it out. They're the ones I can work. So they're the ones I can actually post content on. So you'll find me on these three places. So Wolf Woman Rising Official on Instagram, then Wolf Woman Rising on Facebook, Wolf Woman Rising on YouTube. Just look for Wolf Woman Rising. And if you can't find that, look for my name, Rachel S. Roberts. And yeah, you can find me there and it'd be lovely to connect.
No, wonderful. As I said, thank you very much for chatting about the magic in you, Rachel. All the best.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Blessings.